surgery. I'm Keith Dibble, leader of the Rushmore Labour Group and councillor for North Town in Aldershot. And as I say, welcome to our weekly online surgery. I will go around and ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. So any councillors or our colleagues from Aldershot Park, please, if you could introduce yourselves.
Good morning, I'm Sophie Porter, councillor for Aldershot Park Ward.
Yeah. And your colleagues Terry Bridgman and Mike Roberts may join us as the meeting goes along. Cherrywood Ward in Farnborough. If you could introduce
my name's
yourself,
Ashley
please.
Holstead and I represent Cherrywood Ward. I've done so for about 2 years now.
Hello,
yes,
I'm Councillor Guinness and I'm Cherrywood Ward.
Yeah, oh yeah. Clive Grattan, also Cherrywood Ward.
Thank you. And our colleagues from Wellington Ward in Aldershot.
Oh yeah, and
Councillor Alex Crawford. Good morning.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And I believe Councillor Nadia Martin will be joining during the course of the meeting. And I'm Keith Dibble from North Town Ward, and my colleague Gaynor Austin will be joining the call. I think so, struggling a little bit with IT issues at the moment. So just run through the topics we want to cover today is just to give a brief update on the first Rushmore full council meeting that was held on Thursday online. Alec Crawford will update us on care homes and urgent questions he asked at the meeting. We'll have an update on the April recycling data. Then we'll go through the COVID support teams, the Vine, COVID-19 Farnborough and the ARC in Aldershot. Brief few residents on school meals. The Rushmore head of property gave evidence to the Parliamentary Committee or Audit Committee on local government investment in property last week. We'll comment on that, and then we'll run through the various ward updates and finish as normal with our entertainment correspondent Ale with an update and advice on where to find entertainment online. So I will start with the full council meeting we had on Thursday, which was the first one since the COVID-19 lockdown. It was a very long meeting for not many outcomes because each of the votes had to be taken verbally. So every time a question was put, 37 councillors had to answer on a roll call, which usually was a show of hands. But so the decisions made were the first one was that the council formally agreed to conduct meetings online until further notice. The second one, which was a weighty document, which was the endorsement of the new constitution of the council, which effectively is just bringing it in line with any changes made in the last couple of years with the structure. So a very weighty document of looks like hundreds of pages, but actually it's the document that enables the council to operate. And the final item was the formal confirmation of the leader of the council, which is Councillor David Clifford. He's leader of the Conservative group. They have the majority of councillors, so therefore he will be council leader, and then he chose his cabinet, and then there was confirmation of the various committees, which are done on a percentage of representation on the council. So each committee, I think it's 11 people on there, and we as a Labour group have 3 members on every committee, and we will be posting those appointments on our website or Facebook pages over the next couple of days. Any questions on that from anyone? Okay, please say we've been joined by Councillor Bridgman from Aldershot Park and Councillor Austin from North Town. So welcome to the meeting. Moving on, let's pick up on care homes. And Councillor Crawford, if you'd like to update us on that, please.
Yes, thanks very much, Keith. Yeah, well, when I started raising these issues together with our other colleagues in the Labour group about 4 or 5 weeks ago, of course, it was quite low profile. And we were just getting feedback from local residents in care homes and local staff in care homes that there may be a problem in care homes. And so we started asking the questions. And then we weren't getting that good a response, so we carried out a survey about 10 days ago, and this revealed that there really were serious problems in local care homes. And so we raised this with our local contact point with the Hampshire Local Resilience Forum, and again, we got an answer back, which we weren't getting that, trying to reassure us that everything was okay. But then we got some data is actually what was going on. And the latest data that came out about the COVID-19 deaths in Rushmore, that's particularly in Aldershot and Farnborough, shows that 53 deaths up until the 1st of May. Of those 53 deaths, 20 are in care homes. So this showed that actually we were right. There was a great problem. So we decided to put down an urgent question for the council meeting on Thursday. And I'll just read it to you if I may. Given that many local authority areas have very high COVID-19 infection rates and continue to see many deaths in care homes, can you, as a matter of urgency, press to obtain the information, the resources and the commitment from the government and Hampshire Local Resilience Forum for measures that deal effectively with such COVID-19 hotspots? And that question was put in. And of course, by this time, the council and Hampshire are aware that something needs to be done. So we've had a good response to that question that we put in. They're promising much more support to care homes going forward, and they're promising to raise with the government that in particular care homes should be treated as hotspots, and whether that kind of pressure must be coming from all around the country, I suppose. But the government finally conceded on Thursday that they would release another £600 million in order to support the effort to resist COVID-19 in care homes. So we feel that we've played our part in raising the whole issue of care homes. And of course, it came to a head at the Prime Minister's questions this Wednesday, when Keir Starmer chose that issue to focus his criticism of the government's handling of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, and showed that how they dealt with care homes had been totally unsatisfactory. And let's hope that from now on, we will see things improve. But the fear is, of course, that the death rates I just gave you are up until the 1st of May. In the meantime, we're 2 weeks further on, and we're likely to see further deaths in care homes in Rushmore. Thank you very much, Keith.
Any questions on that, or any points anyone would want to make?
Yes, please. I was very worried to read in the paper that some hospitals in the past anyway have been discharging patients back to nursing homes without testing them, and some of them were positive. Is the council sort of aware of that?
Yeah, sure. This was one of the factors that we put in our survey. We'd had some indications from one of our councillors that this was what was happening. And so we put it into our survey, and we did get that response from care homes that this is what was happening. Several of them reported they were having patients discharged from hospital who, just because they come off the at-risk category in hospital and had come off ventilators and intensive care treatment, they were now ready to be discharged back to care homes. Well, of course, if they're still infectious, that's no good, but there was no check that, you know, they were being, whether they were still infectious or not. So that has certainly been raised, and we're promised that in future there will be no one released back into care homes until they've been tested and shown to be no longer infectious.
Thank you. Is there any possibility that someone might, they might think of maybe releasing someone some kind of holding facility to sort of free up beds in hospital, but not risk the nursing homes.
Yeah, sure. I think that perhaps Sophie might comment on this, but my understanding is that in the cases earlier, it was supposed to be up to the nursing homes or the care homes to have an isolation facility where they could put in someone that they still suspected of being infectious. But clearly that doesn't seem to have been effective, since we've seen so many deaths in care homes in Rushmore.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Porter, any comment you want to add to that?
Yes, going back to one of your earlier question, I think very much right at the start, hospitals weren't fully aware about the pressure that was going to come onto them, and I know that there were some issues with flow, and when people were coming in to hospital, they were being discharged if they could go to a nursing home, because there was that view that there was going to be a huge pressure on hospitals. Now, I know the practice has changed. I was speaking to somebody who works in a care home, and they have one of their residents who's currently an inpatient. The plan is that they are tested before they come home, and then the plan for them is that they're going to be isolated within their room and nursed, barrier nursed that way with specific staff looking after them. Now, obviously, going back to one of Alex's questions with what we were picking up from care homes, where the issues are not always patients coming out of hospital. It also goes back to adequate PPE. If you've got a member of staff who is positive of COVID and there isn't adequate PPE for them, then they obviously can pass that on when they're giving care. So there are still some issues, but as Alex said, he's some great pressure on the local Rushmore Resilience Forum, and we have seen some improvements locally.
And Alex, the resilience forums, who are they made up of? It's a term we hear, but who forms those forums?
Yeah, sure. So the idea is that the government, because it's has to feed down to the local level its instructions as to what needs to be done. At the county council level, they have what's called the Hampshire Local Resilience Forum, and that comprises representatives of all the major services, whether it's health, local authority, police, fire, ambulance, and all of that kind of thing. And they're all supposed to be working together to tackle this major crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. And so what they're supposed to be doing is to identify where the issues are in their area. So, for example, the Hampshire Local Resilience Forum has weekly contact with care homes, sends them a questionnaire, but of course, it depends what happens in response to the answers they're getting back and how effective the communication is. And this is where the difficulty seems to have come, is that not all the people who are having problems are being listened to and getting as Sophie has mentioned, we're getting the personal protective equipment they needed, and we're getting the testing that they needed, and so on. So all of that communication has to be improved. And our view is, that we need much more attention to what's going on at the local level, to taking up the feedback that people are able to give at the local level, so that we can get a better response out of these fairly high level bodies who, Hampshire has 1 3/4 million people. So one local resilience forum trying to manage everything that's going on in Hampshire is very difficult. So we need much more local input.
And care homes, do they have to be, to be classified as a care home, do you have to be registered?
Yeah, sure.
There seems to be lots of private organisations that seem to charge a small fortune for elderly people and their families.
Yeah, sure. And this was the other aspect where it all broke down, was that all these care homes have to be registered, whether they're private or public or whatever, with the Care Quality Commission. And unfortunately, between the Care Quality Commission and Public Health England, there seemed to be a bit of, how should I put it, dispute about who should actually be responsible for ensuring that all the appropriate measures were taken in care homes. So up until, I think it was towards the end of March, it seemed to be the Care Quality Commission. Well, when lockdown happened, it then became Public Health England. But again, all of that created confusion as to who was responsible for what. And it's only just recently, in the last week, that the Care Quality Commission has agreed that they will go back and carry out inspections. And one of the things we did locally was we sent the results of our survey to the Care Quality Commission, and after 6 attempts at getting through to them, they finally accepted that there was a problem and that they would investigate and look into it.
And the Care Quality Commission, is that a government body? Is it funded by public money, or?
Yeah, sure, it's a government body, yeah. Yeah, so
so it's actually an extension of government, so to speak, even though it's not classed as a government department. It's a wholly funded government operation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on care homes? Okay, let's move on. One of the consequences of the COVID-19 and the lockdown has been obviously changes to our weekly bin collection and the temporary closure of the household recycling centres, and we'll be picking that up a little bit later. And my colleague Anne Rostin has spent the best part of the whole week at Ivy Road, but we'll come on to that a bit later. But at the informal cabinet meeting, which I attended on Tuesday, we were given the recycling figures for April, and there's been some remarkable changes. And of course, there are lots of reasons why there are changes, because people are at home and maybe they're considering to recycle more. They can't go to they couldn't at that stage go to the recycling centres. But for April, recycling in Aldershot and Farnborough was up 38%. Residual waste, which is waste going into landfill, was down 3%, and glass recycling was up 70%. This was for 1 month. Now, you know, everyone could draw individual conclusions from that. I'm sure the glass being up is people drinking healthy shakes and energy drinks, and as a result of all the exercise they've been doing, and not wine or beer. But I'm afraid one house in Hague Row had to have a top-up bottle bank bin this week to dispose of the bottles, but they were nearly all alcohol-free. So any observations on that from anyone? I mean, those figures are quite remarkable, but in remarkable times. Any feedback from local residents about recycling? Not about the household recycling centres, we'll come on to those later, but just about recycling in general. I mean, the issue I think we've had in Northtown has been people concerned about food waste. But any feedback from anyone from their constituents?
Hi, Keith. It's Sophie.
Hello there.
Hello. I have had a few concerns about household waste, and what we've been able to do is work with the council to get people bigger blue recycling bins. So people are then focusing more on their recycling rather than their waste, and it's had the residents have had sent positive feedback about it. So
that's good. That's good. Anyone else? Any feedback? Two things. One is to remind everyone that the garden waste, the brown bin garden waste, is a subscription service. And I think 1 or 2 people left garden waste out expecting it to be collected, but that is a subscription service. But for this forthcoming week, starting on Monday the 18th, it's green bin. So we will be posting that on our ward-based here for Facebook pages, but this coming week it is the green bin. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's move on then, going back to COVID, and just an update on the various voluntary groups that are supporting Aldershot and Farnborough at the moment. And we'll start with the Vine and Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much, Keith. I've provided our producer, Hash, with a whole list of background documents about the services that the Vine provides. But in summary, what I would say is that in the 7 weeks where the Vine has been running their COVID-19 project, they've now been in contact with vulnerable and isolated people in Aldershot and Farnborough over 4,500 times. So it's been a tremendous effort. And you know, so I would say that they've done exactly what they've been set up to do as a local charity to help the vulnerable and the isolated. What they have reported, we had a meeting of our trustees yesterday of the Vine Centre. One of the things that was reported yesterday is a very much increase in the need for mental health support. And if you there's an article in The Guardian today about that, showing that increasingly people who have been responding to the COVID-19 pandemic by having a number of serious mental health issues. Now, fortunately, the Vine has some mental health counsellors and is able to support some people, but even there, they've been having feeling that they're a bit stretched in the last week, and they only see it increasing in the future. One of the things that caused this increase in the last week was the, how shall I put it, the lack of clarity in the government advice. This meant that people were confused and they didn't know how to deal with their own circumstances. If they, you know, felt the advice was one way or another. And so this caused them to have some people to have mental health issues. So that's what I would say about the Vine Centre. And I believe our producer can put all the details online so that people can access the services if they need them.
How is the Vine funded, Alex? How is it funded? Because one's always seeing that they're asking for donations from the public. So how do they function with financial support, and what sort of funds do they need to operate on a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, sure. The Vine is a charity, and it has to raise all its own funds, and so its total budget for the year is of the order of £250,000 to £300,000, and it has to raise that money entirely out of its own efforts. So they have a big focus on fundraising. They have someone who specialises in that, in writing bids to other major charities, national and locally, that can support them. They appeal to local councillors for councillors' grants, and also they appeal to the public. And all of these funding streams come together, and it can be difficult. I mean, when I was first involved as a trustee 4 years ago, there was a fear then that they weren't going to be able to raise enough funds for the year ahead, and there was a fear that the charity might have to close down. Fortunately, we came in, we had a new approach altogether, and we've got out of that. And at the current time, we're able to fund the COVID-19 project adequately by getting funds from different sources, including Rushmore Borough Council, it has to be said, Rushmore Borough Councillors and Hampshire County Councillors, all of whom have chipped money in to help out.
Thank you. Any questions about the Vine?
I just want to show everybody my mask that I bought from Masks for the Vine. They're £5, and all the money donated goes to the Vine Centre. Can you see it?
Very impressive. Very impressive.
Keith, can I come in there?
Yes, please, Councillor Grattan.
Just to point out that the Vine does a very good job, and the Pebble from Prospect Estate donates over £20,000 a year to them, and they operate a very good service on a Wednesday, and they contact regular just for phone calls and for mental health reasons to our local residents in the Prospect area.
Yeah, and they've been doing outreach work in Northtown, but I think that's come to an end as a result of the COVID. But it's a really good point, Councillor Grattan. Sticking on Farnborough, let's get an update, please, from our Cherrywood colleagues on COVID-19 Farnborough. How's that operating?
Yeah, so it's pretty much been the same. There's been no extra movement. It's the Larder, the Good Shepherd, have said it's been a much quieter week for them. But on the COVID-19 Cherrywood team, they've said that they've stayed the same with all the ones that they've already got on their lists and books. They've continued with over the last week, but they haven't had much in the line of new referrals. They are preparing for a second wave though, because as we know, many more people are returning to work. So we are preparing that there is going to be a second wave with friends and families all going to work, that we're going to get more calls of people needing help.
Councillor Halstead or Grattan, anything you want to add to that?
Just that on the larder section, they are asking for more items like treats for children, as they get normal stuff in, like instant food and stuff like, but they're looking for things like pot noodles and small treats so the children can have some of their little extras as well, and that's what they're lacking at this moment in time.
Yeah, if I can just come in, sorry, if I can just supplement what Christine was saying about expecting a second wave. That's the indication I've had from Frimley Park Hospital, is that they're preparing for a second wave as a result of the release of lockdown.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to our colleagues in Farnborough? Okay, let's switch to Aldershot and ARC and ask Councillor Austin to update us on developments and the last week there.
Yes, Keith. ARC, which is Aldershot's response to coronavirus, it has been continuing on supporting many residents in Aldershot, and all of the volunteers doing an amazing job, and the coordinators working really, really hard dealing with phone calls and emails. ARC are working with many of the other organisations, for example, like The Vine, connections with the groups in Farnborough, with ORCA, which is the Rushmore Community Action Group, and also with Hampshire County Council. And if you contact ARC, if we can't help initially, we can put you in the right direction for any help. There's no need for anybody to be struggling and think that there's no one to turn to. So you can contact ARC via the email, which is at arcactiongroup@gmail.com. So that's ARC actiongroup@gmail.com, or you can call on 01252 214 022. Phone lines are open from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday to Friday, but outside of those hours you can leave a message that will come through as an email to the group as well, so that will be picked up as soon as somebody's available to help. But just a big well done to everybody who's involved, and all of the wonderful volunteers.
Thank you, Gaynor. Any questions on the Aldershot ARC? A question for me, really, and I mean, the three organisations are doing amazing support work to our community. But picking up the points you've raised, Gaynor, I mean, if you're a vulnerable member of society, or someone that needs, elderly person that is self-isolating or being told to isolate, and they can't go shopping, if they called the ARC or called the Vine, would, as you said, that be passed on? If it wasn't that they didn't contact the right organisation, would it be passed on to the appropriate organisation, or would they be told to phone someone else?
It may be that we would give them details to contact the right organisation themselves if we felt that that they were uncomfortable doing that or couldn't do that. We would refer them directly. Generally, we're referring them, making referrals directly to other organisations that can help. It's about getting the right help for the right circumstances.
That's really good to hear, because I mean, sometimes people that are vulnerable or slightly embarrassed about asking for help, aren't they? And if you've got to make more than one phone call, they may not follow that through. But the Vine, Alex, that does meals for people. Is that right? Does that do? So what people qualify to get the meals prepared or delivered?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the way it works at the Vine Centre is that if you feel you qualify and that you really need to be in the vulnerable or isolated categories, you can telephone us, and the number is 01252 400 196, or you can email info@thevinecentre.org.uk, and they will then question you as to whether you're eligible for their support. But so, for example, in the last week, they delivered 250 home-cooked meals and sent out family food parcels to 25 people who said they could cook their own meals. And over the last 7 weeks, they've sent out just short of 1,900 home-cooked meals and 166 family food deliveries. So that's definitely what's required. But they don't just send it out to everyone. You have to meet the criteria of either being vulnerable or isolated. And that means you have to be not able to go shopping yourself and don't have anyone to do shopping for you.
And is there a charge for the meal? Is there a charge for the meal?
No, everything is, because this is the COVID-19 project, which the Vine Centre is funding out of the charitable donations it's received. It gets a lot of donations of food from local supermarkets and so on in order to make these meals. So, and they're, high quality meals that are prepared in their professional standard kitchen that they have in Station Road, Aldershot.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's really useful. I mean, I think from the group of Labour councillors, we should our thanks should be passed on to those three organisations, because effectively, if you take away that safety net, there is nothing there, is there? And I think credit to all those volunteers and you guys for coordinating it. And I know, one or two members of our group, 3 or 4 members of our group are very much involved in that. So thank you. Well,
sorry, if I may, Keith, I mean, I think it might be worthwhile as a group considering, perhaps this isn't the right forum for it, but considering perhaps proposing to Rushmore that they hold some kind of event to recognise the great contribution of all the volunteers have made throughout this COVID-19 period.
We look forward to seeing your letter to the new mayor on that, but it's an excellent idea. Meals are very important, nutrition and making sure that people are eating properly during this difficult times. And ask my colleague, Councillor Gaynor Austin, to give us an update on school meals and free school meals and what process there is to follow there. So Gaynor.
Yes, thanks, Keith. I'll just keep this brief because I know we've got a lot to get covered. But actually, via ARC, with my involvement with ARC, I was aware that a number of parents had been struggling accessing the school meals vouchers for those who are entitled to free school meals. Many of these are the most vulnerable children, and quite often a school meal when they're in school is the only decent meal they're getting during the day. Again, with many financial difficulties with families at the moment, having those children at home and having to feed them those lunchtime meals has caused great difficulty. I had also heard from a member of school staff from a school that the schools were struggling as well to feed and support the children when they're actually in school. Those children, those vulnerable children and children of key workers that they're at schools at the moment. So I contacted a large number of head teachers across the borough, and
feedback that I've had so far has been that helping those vulnerable families has actually been a huge challenge to them. The first 2 weeks of, or the last 2 weeks of the last term, which was early on in the lockdown situation, they found it really difficult. So they were actually going out and buying food vouchers themselves from the supermarkets to provide to those families that are normally on free school meals. I mean, having been a teacher myself, I do know how much at the best of times teachers are supplementing and supporting children in school in many ways, often out of their own salaries. So obviously that's something that they've stepped in and done. They've covered with sending out food boxes, for example, during the Easter holidays, which were pretty sparse, but again, often teachers and head teachers were involved in delivering those themselves to the families. Accessing the food vouchers has been a struggle, with school staff spending hours and hours online to try and access them. Often they're going into the junk mail of parents. Even then, they're taking a long time. There have been problems, of course, that the schools are having to sometimes support those families who may not have access to the internet, may not be able to print these vouchers out, and when they do, quite often they sometimes there are issues with literacy, which means that they need support in how to access and how to use them. So the schools are working really hard on that. I've heard of schools where the delivery of free fruit and milk, which is available to infant children, has stopped. So those schools, some schools are not getting those now. And I think it's something that we need to be looking at and seeing as council, how we can make sure that schools are getting all the support, particularly as they may be planning to take in more children in June. So
Thanks, Janet.
That's it. I have asked on our online, on our Here for North Town, I asked parents to get in touch if they had any experience of using school vouchers or any staff about how the schools are feeding children at the moment. So if anybody has anything else that they would like to say, any more information on that, they can contact me.
Excellent.
So
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I feel that this is if the kind of situation where the local resilience forum should come into action, and I don't know whether you've been in touch with Karen Edwards about this, Gaynor, but she's our contact point with the Hampshire Local Resilience Forum to get those kinds of issues dealt with as a matter of urgency. But that's just a question for you.
Yes, thanks, Alex. Yes, I haven't been in touch with her yet because I was waiting to hear back from the head teachers that I was inquiring with. But that was certainly something I will be doing.
I can speak on behalf of Oak Farm Preschool and Cherrywood Community School. They've been absolutely fabulous. They haven't been, I mean, Oak Farm Preschool doesn't get vouchers anyway, but they've been sorting out and delivering packs to the families at home that not just food, but actually activities, because we're talking sort of 2, 3, 4-year-olds that are getting ready to go to school. Things that they can still continue to do their fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and things at home activities. Cherrywood Community Primary School haven't used the vouchers. They haven't given them out to the parents. They've actually kept them in the school and used the money themselves, and they've actually been delivering to the families each day or each week, which is ever easier. They sort of swap it about sometimes. But with that, they've also been given help, which Clive can tell you about, from Pebble, to help towards the cost of things. They both Oak Farm and Cherrywood have been given some quite good grants to help towards actually paying towards the food and all the activities stuff that's been going out.
So anyone have further comments? Or anyone online who would non-councillors like to ask a question or raise a point, please feel free to use the chat box or intervene at any time. Thank you, Gaynor. That's really useful information.
Steve, can I just pop in there?
Oh yes, please. Yeah,
that's right. It's just a follow on from Christine there. Pebble, the Prospect Big Local, have just agreed 2 grants, one for Oak Farm, one for Cherrywood, which amounts to cover their 2 months food lunches and breakfasts, which amounts to just over £11,000 for the next 2 months. It's to provide food in parcels so they can get through the next 2 months, because especially with Oak Farm, they don't have any access to the government voucher system.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grattan. One of the issues that local government have been facing in the last 10 years is the continued reduction in the grant from central government. Obviously, we see no reduction in our council tax as a result of that, which means that to maintain services, councils are having to find new methods of raising funds. And one of those, and it's been a very controversial subject, is councils such as Rushmore borrowing money to buy commercial properties in other towns, other boroughs, other cities, to create revenue streams where tenants, businesses or shops will pay their rent, and that funds and subsidises or supports the income for Rushmore Borough Council. And increasingly, that plays a greater part in paying for local services, and it's been seen as a risk. And this week, Rushmore's head of projects and property, Mr. Paul Brooks, gave evidence to a parliamentary committee, in fact, the most important parliamentary committee, which is the Public Accounts Committee, which oversees the spending or use of public money. Councillor Austin, do you want to give us some background to that and actually what Mr. Brooks gave in his evidence?
Yes, Keith. So, as you say, it's been pretty much over the last decade that, with the funding cuts to local authorities, that they have looked a lot more to investing largely in property, quite often in retail property. And I did put a question on here for Northtown just to assess people's views on this, because of the risk and the money that's being invested being our money, our public money, and the fact that a lot of our services that we expect to be provided could now be based on having that income coming in from investments, but that's actually is quite, as you say, quite a risk. So we need to be, as councillors, we need to make sure that the management of these schemes is secure, and that there's effective government, and that risk is managed, because if that income is lost, which in certain circumstances investments haven't worked out well for some local authorities, then where do we get the funding to provide those services, which are already quite restricted due to cuts in money from central government? So yes, I was interested to see that Paul was giving evidence to the Public Accounts Committee, and just thought that it's interesting. A lot of residents don't actually realise that this is going on with our public money. Now, some think it's absolutely fine. Others obviously may be concerned about the risks involved. So, finding out that Paul was giving evidence, I was quite interested to have a look at that. Also, I was given a document from the District Councils network, who were also providing evidence. They're a cross-party member-led network of district councils, which sets out, firstly, the pros and the cons of this sort of investment, but also highlights the link is really with the current pandemic. Coming out of this, we already know that our high streets, for example, are in have been declining over quite a number of years. Who knows how the economy is going to be coming out of this, if retail sector is going to improve at all and come back and to make some of those investments even more risky. So I know as councillors we've had some input on this from Rushmore as members, and you know, I just think it's quite interesting to know sort of your views. So for example, I don't know if Councillor Clifford or Crawford, sorry, has any views on the investments and how it's being managed at Rushmore.
Yeah, thanks, Gaynor. I think the difficulty is, and I picked up on this in February when the National Audit Office produced the report, which pointed out that actually the government wasn't managing the risk of these investments very well, because it's the government through the Public Work Loan Board that is providing cheap money for the councils to make these investments. And the National Audit Office said that if the government was to tighten up its controls and stop the easy access to the Public Works Loans Board cheap money, councils could be in big trouble. And this is the difficulty. Well, my understanding is that, and I read the document that you referred to, Gaynor, the District Council's network document. And of course, that document was putting up the case, we need more government money to make these investments so that we can provide the services. Well, you know, unfortunately, it seems, and we'll have to wait for what the Public Accounts Committee says, that they look set to recommend that the government should not be providing such cheap money to local authorities. And now Rushmore has tens of millions of pounds invested in commercial property at cheap loan rates. And so we'll have to see how that plays out when we get the report from our head of finance to see whether going forward what the effect is on Rushmore's finances. But the latest indications I've had are that there's many hundreds of thousands of pounds shortage at the current time.
Yes, thanks, Alex. I think also that my reading of the documents from District Councils Network also seem to be saying that we didn't need any further oversight by central government. So it was a bit of a, yes, give us the money and leave us to it, please. Which is quite interesting. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on this area of our investment. Yes, Keith.
Yeah, I think credit to this group is that we, taking the role of scrutiny very, very seriously, were very concerned going back 2 or 3 years when there seemed to be a scattergun approach, as Rushmore were buying properties in Guildford, Worthing, and other parts. And as a result of our lobbying, there is now a property advisory board, which I as opposition leader sit on. So for new properties to be bid for and acquired, there are checks and balances. And the council did a very good move by employing Lambton Smith Hampton as their property advisors. And I think since they've been involved, and since the property board's been involved, and since we've been scrutinising, there is now a more sensible approach to new acquisitions. But I think many residents will be very surprised. They expect to see councils like Rushmore borrowing money and investing in their own town centres. But I think they'd be genuinely surprised if they knew that Rushmore in recent years had purchased retail outlets in Guildford and commercial properties in Frimley and Worthing and other places. And you could ask, well, why are we investing in other towns when our own town centres are in decline? So it'd be very interesting to see what the Public Accounts Committee come forward with. But the view from the councils, of course, is that government take away 50% of their grants, they've got to recover that some way. But I don't think that property investment is the safest route for that. But we'll keep everyone updated on that. And thank you again. Sorry, Councillor Bridgman.
Yeah, just to back up what you said, Keith, I was two and I with the two on the scrutiny committee who queried the case. The thing that we warned out at the time was the example of what happened with the investment in Iceland a few years back. Putting too many eggs in one basket in a volatile market. And we know that the property market does generally tend to run over time, but it does have great big troughs. And if the property market collapses, we could be in for a big loss again. So we've got to be careful about what we do with our local people's money.
I think investment in retail is not the smartest move at the moment. And residents would be surprised to know that a closed shop in Guildford is owned by Rushmore Borough Council in the High Street, but they wouldn't do that again. Thank you for that, Gaynor, and I think that shows really the breadth of work that we do as an opposition group by checking all these different avenues. So now we've got 10 minutes left, so we'll do a quick run round of ward issues, and apologies for those online who have taken a long time to get there, but I think there's some really key issues this morning. So we'll start with our colleagues in Aldershot Park, Councillor Porter and Councillor Bridgman, and any issues to raise there.
Yes, so next week, if some of you may not know, is National Mental Health Awareness Week, and the focus is on kindness. Now, talking to some residents, talking to family members, and from my own personal experience, and very interesting to listen to what Alex was saying about the Vine Centre, is people feel, there's a lot of pressure on social media to be the best, the best homeschool mum, or to be having the best time in lockdown, and that's not the case for all people, and especially myself. And this has put me on a bit of a journey. I myself am experiencing different emotions that I wouldn't normally be feeling. I've been anxious, I've been depressed, and actually I feel it's important to talk about it, to raise awareness that actually not everybody is okay, and it's okay to not be okay. So with regards to this, and in line with the National Health Awareness Week next week, the Mental Health Foundation has come up with 10 top tips of, and these are to help you during these times, is to talk about your feelings, keep active, eat well, drink sensibly, keep in touch, ask for help, take a break, do something you're good at, accept who you are, and care for others. Now, I am from a personal experience, I've been looking at some of the services that are available locally to us. And Alex was saying about the Vine line, which you can contact on 01252 400 196. Or there is Talk Plus, which is a self-referral system for a counselling surgery. Counselling service. And you can contact them and self-refer on 01252 533 355. There's a lot of information on mind.org.uk. What it is for next week is the focus is very much on kindness, and about if we're kind to each other, it helps us to unlock our shared humanity, is what was being said. And with reference to kindness, what the Aldershot Park Ward councillors are doing and will be launching from next week is called a virtual cuppa with your councillor. So what we are offering our residents is the chance to talk about how they're feeling, the chance to raise any issues or concerns. And the way that this will happen is residents will get into contact with us. We'll arrange a time over and a meeting over Zoom, FaceTime, Teams, or Messenger, or alternatively people can call us, and we'll have a chat with our residents whilst we're having a cup of tea. And that's a way that we're going to share a bit of kindness next week during Mental Health Awareness Week.
Thank you, Sophie. It'd be great if next week you could feedback on how many cuppas you have, and because I think it's a good initiative, and we know, I think many of us would be keen to roll that out if it's practical. So it'd be good to hear back on that.
Certainly.
Cherrywood, let's get some feedback from Cherrywood. Councillor Guinness, you were involved in reporting, I think, a fire yesterday, which was had some quite severe consequences. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first I knew about it was I actually got a call from my hubby, said he was driving off somewhere, and he phoned me and said, oh, just to let you know, you've got 4 fire engines and an ambulance heading into your ward. And then literally about 2 minutes after that, I had a resident phone me, said something's on fire in Carmarthen. So yeah, I grabbed my smallest one and dashed out the door, went over there, spoke to the fire brigade, and then sort of set up a mini camp on the green opposite, where Clive came and joined me. And then we kept in contact the police, and fire brigade, brilliant, kept coming over to us, updating us with all the information. Every bit of information we had, we were phoning through to the housing team at RBC to keep them up to date. So we had all the residents' details that were living there, their names and ages, etc. Housing were wonderful in arranging, making sure that if they couldn't find somewhere to live, that we had emergency accommodation booked and ready for them. As it turned out, they did actually manage to get themselves sorted for the weekend. So RBC have said now that they'll make contact with them on Monday morning to see what's happening from then on. I'm going to give the gentleman a phone call this afternoon to check that they're all right for food and see if they need any clothing or anything like that. But yeah, there was 7 of them in the house. So yeah, but thankfully they got out, and the emergency services were just there so quickly and just, you know, did their job as they always do. But you just, you know, they are heroes, aren't they?
Okay. So what was the damage to the house? Was it is it livable when?
No, certainly not at the moment. No, there's virtually no roof.
Okay.
So it was a candle started on the first floor, but yeah, it's gone up through.
But that's an example of how these social networks work to the community's benefit, isn't it? And I think that's amazing. Well done. Anything else in Cherrywood you, Ashley, or Clive, want to comment on?
Just to follow up from Christine, the fire brigade checked the structure of the building and the 2 premises either side and found they were safe, so the occupants of them were quite able to stay within their home. I've had some communication from some residents offering help of clothing and things like kettles and toasters if there need be. And if it comes back after Christine's call later on that they need some additional stuff, I'll be contacting them residents. There's only one other thing in the area. Seem to have 1 or 2 residents that are a little bit concerned because they're not certain if the large items are still being operated by Rushmore.
They're not at the moment. I don't think that the household waste collection.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think that is operating at the moment, but hopefully that'll come back soon.
I've asked them to contact Rushmore direct to double check.
Yeah. Councillor Halstead. Oh, sorry, Christine.
Sorry, I was just going to say, well, he was talking about the rubbish collections, but the actual queues to the tip are currently each day a waiting time of 2 to 2.5 hours if you want to attend. So really, please, you know, unless it's really necessary, please don't.
Okay, we're moving on. Ashley, anything you want to come in before we move on to North Town?
Just a sort of quick one. One of the main workers for the COVID-19 Cherrywood page is having to step down as of next week, and Christine, Clive and I are sort of looking at how we can sort of bridge the gap. But obviously if anyone in Cherrywood is looking to volunteer and help, because obviously I'm currently still working and I'm shielded, I can't go outside, and then obviously Christine and Clive are also bridging a lot as it is. If anyone is willing to help, then please do get in touch with one of us and we'll pass your details on.
I'm sure, and we can that be promoted on your continue. I'm sure on here for Cherrywood. Good, thank you. Moving on to North Town, I'll ask my colleague Councillor Austin, who spent the best part of her week on North Lane looking at stationary traffic. Gaynor.
Yes, it's been an exciting week. All the glamour of hanging around the waste and recycling centre, and yes, busy road junctions. Yes, so a lot has been going on in North Town, particularly on North Lane, with the reopening of the Ivy Road Hampshire Waste and Recycling Centre. There's been we knew that this was going to be very, very busy after people being in lockdown for such a long time, doing a lot of DIY, gardening, decorating, producing more waste, with the bin collections having been put to fortnightly. So we knew that there were going to be traffic issues. We've managed to keep those off North Lane, which actually has worked very well, but then we do have large queues extending back towards Ivy Fields through the industrial estate, which is causing some inconvenience to some of the businesses there. So as you know, Keith, myself, along with you and our Hampshire County Councillor Bill Withers, went along and spoke to some of the businesses there and to some of the residents queuing to see what we can do to try and improve the situation. We have made recommendations to increase the opening hours, which are at the moment are just 10 till 4. The manager of the centre is very supportive of that. But you know, we have had suggestions that there may be other ways that it could be operated in the short term. For example, an online or telephone booking system to book a time slot, which would keep the queues down. I mean, this could even be just at peak hours. Other ones were alternate registration numbers on alternate days. I put a poll on here for North Town, which possibly we can extend out to some of our other Facebook groups and pages, that asks people what their preferred sort of system would be. It seems to be that the vast majority, they want their bin collections coming back to weekly. We all do, but at the moment that isn't possible. So we really need to deal with the situation that is causing, in Aldershot, I think one day we went along and there was probably about a 4-hour queue, 3 to 4 hours.
So that survey, Gaynor, I think it'd be a good idea if our colleagues in other wards, because the same question really applies to Invincible Road as well, if I could copy that. But I mean, what Gaynor and I were being told yesterday was that people who've got nothing else to do actually didn't mind queuing for 3 hours. It'd be high spot of their day, but as
I think
Gaynor
the problems are coming firstly for the businesses locally, and secondly for those people who aren't so happy, who turn up and then have difficulty turning around and going around bends with parked cars and stationary cars, and then tend to be not very patient, and you know, they also don't want an accident to happen.
So the businesses you spoke to, Gaynor, what were their concerns? Was it staff struggling to get to the office on time or the warehouse on time, and deliveries? What sort of queries were they having?
Yeah,
what
mostly
challenges were they having?
Partly staff finding parking spaces, which people were waiting in their parking spaces to maybe get into the queue. Also access for couriers and deliveries who are coming in when they're having gates blocked. They're having people turning around in their car parks, in their property, and also we've got the likes of DHL with huge vehicles that you know, have a huge turning circle to get out, and people possibly blocking those in or not leaving enough room to drive, or vehicles driving on the wrong side of the road, if you like, and meeting up with others. So all sorts of difficulties really, which we want to try and minimise over. I mean, obviously this should ease off over the next few weeks, but it's the next few weeks that we need to be looking at.
Can I ask a question about what is being done about the fact that Hampshire County Council said that the only people who should visit tips are people who could not store their waste, and that the waste they had to be either unsafe to store or dangerous. Is there any supervision at the entrance to the tip to ask people, how come you're here if you're how is your waste unsafe or dangerous to store?
A good question, Alex. To be honest, I think so many residents actually just know that the tip is open for these hours. I don't think, from my experience, that a lot of them have read through what are quite lengthy details from Hampshire to really know that. They've been in lockdown for quite a number of weeks, many in flats, and they really just want to get rid of, at this point, what is stored there. Yes, Keith.
Yeah, if I could come here, I mean, you're quite right, Gain. I think the guidelines from Hampshire County Council, or all county councils, you can tell, are written by desktop civil servants that read well, but actually know, not all civil servants, but on this particular occasion, without realising the consequences of what they're saying. Because if you're going to queue for 4 hours, I mean, you get there, finally get to the gates, and the man or woman says, "I'm sorry, you can't come in. That's not urgent waste." There's going to be conflict, isn't there?
Yeah, and so from the point of view of the staff at the centre, who are doing a fantastic job,
brilliant people,
at the same time as trying to keep everybody safe with social distancing, including themselves, just allowing 3 cars in at a time. They really don't have the capacity to be examining the waste in people's cars to see whether it's that urgent. So luckily, I think everybody's been very well behaved and very patient. So.
And the skill of those DHL huge lorries, the drivers getting in and out of spaces where there's no more than a couple of car widths, is amazing. And another hot topic, no pun intended, is the issues caused by traffic congestion and litter with the reopening of KFC and both their deliveries and drive-through. And again, if the half the week you weren't spent at Ivy Road, you were spent at North Close, North Lane Junction. But there was a meeting yesterday with some very senior staff from KFC. Do you want to update us on that, Gaynor?
Yes, well, I mean, unfortunately, I can't get away from here really, since I live right near the junction. So I'm seeing what's going on and hearing it at all times. Yes, it was a very, having given our representations to KFC about the problems, I think we had a very positive response. And actually, the meeting yesterday, we had the chief executive of KFC UK and Ireland, which was quite impressive. Actually came along and spoke to us, as well as other management, representative from our traffic management unit and Hampshire County Council, and yes, local residents and a local business person also came and spoke to us, and a very positive discussion. They've already put in place, increased the number of marshals to stop traffic backlogging on at that junction, which, as we know, is quite a dangerous junction. We've again been making representations to Hampshire County Council on that for a long time. So this isn't helping. Came out of the positive conversation, other things that they can do to improve the situation, which they will be doing. We'll be keeping the dialogue open, and also a concern is with the reopening of McDonald's soon, or the plans to possibly partially reopen, that this will add to all of the difficulties on North Lane. So we will be arranging a meeting with McDonald's management, along with KFC management and other interested parties, to proactively see what we can do to minimise disruption. But I would just say, if you possibly can, get your Kentucky delivered instead of going down and waiting, because they will turn people away when North Close is full, which doesn't take very much. It's actually quicker and easier to get it delivered, because those delivery drivers have a different entrance to go to. And if you can avoid this end of North Lane, which I know is very, very difficult, then please do try and avoid it, particularly at around lunchtime and in the evening, about between 5 and 6 or so. It's particularly busy.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend a day's trip. You can have a day out actually by going to the household waste disposal centre followed by a KFC, and that will take 8 hours of your day. Can I just say, Gona and I wrote to KFC asking for a senior member of their team to come. We didn't expect the MD, and I think she was. You can see why she was MD Gaynor. She was very impressive, but you've never seen litter picking like it early in the morning round the facility.
Well, I live opposite, and I can tell you I've never seen litter picking like that. No.
So they like all VIP visits, it wasn't quite normal, but she was very impressive. A couple of other things on North Lane. There was a small fire last night, some bright spark through Dog End into the hedge by Chestnut Court on North Lane, which caught fire, but the fire brigade were out pretty quickly. And our continuing dialogue with Thames Water to repair and make good the sunken manhole cover on North Lane at the junction with Canning Road. We chase every week and have done since October. It must be the most difficult task that Thames Water have ever had in their work, their history, because they have so many planning meetings. Well, the good news is that we've achieved to get a TW painted in white over the sunken manhole cover, followed by a big yellow cross. So that either gives the signal that they're coming to repair it quickly, or they're going to bomb it. And I don't know, the cross is X marks the spot.
I think it's just a sign that they're going to have another planning meeting.
I think so. But yeah, I mean, we post every week, and Gaynor and I get a huge amount of stick because they blame us and they blame the council. And you wish that residents would moan as well. To please, if you have those concerns, the more residents complaining supports our lobbying. And one of the reasons why we got the MD of KFC is that Gaynor and I last weekend cut and pasted all the comments on Facebook and from email and sent them to KFC. So actually they had a pack of multiple comments which they want to take action on. But at the moment, it's me and Gaynor talking to someone at Thames Water. And actually yesterday it moved from planning to delays now caused by the coronavirus. But there we are. But it is frustrating. And that is some hole on North Lane. So a lot of their spent on North Town. Let's move on to Wellington. Thank you, Gaynor, for your comprehensive report. Wellington, Alex and Nadia, if she's with us.
Yeah, sure. I've got two issues that I feel are important for Wellington Ward. The first one is to do with social distancing, and apparently the reports I've heard are that there's a lack of attention to social distancing in the town centre. Unfortunately, there's certain groups of people who will hang out in the town centre, and therefore this makes it not necessarily such a safe place for people to go. And also, it's particularly exacerbated around Lidl and the entrance to the Wellington Centre in Wellington Street, where there's so much crossover between people that social distancing seems to just have broken down completely. And so that's one issue. The other issue is this whole issue, which is in the news at the moment, is the return of schools. And I would highlight the report from the BMA this morning, the British Medical Association, warning that it is not safe for schools to be returning. And, I have to say that the infection rate in Rushmore is the highest in the whole of Hampshire and Surrey, and therefore it doesn't seem to me the right time for schools to be returning in our area, particularly in the town centre. And this is highlighted by the fact that when we had a breakdown of the death rates in Rushmore, it was particularly the poorest wards in Rushmore that were most affected. And therefore I can't see a case for encouraging the schools to go back on the 1st of June when that is the situation locally. And I would hope that the government sees sense and makes it clear that where the local people feel that it's not safe to return, they shouldn't be encouraging schools to return. And areas like Rushmore are just like Liverpool or Gateshead or Barrow. They've got very high infection rates, and therefore we should be not recommending that schools return at this time.
Very interesting. The BMA. Sorry.
Yes, can I just come in on that one, Keith and Alex?
Yes, please. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, this is something that obviously, like I say, as a former teacher, is really important to me as well. I just think that the government putting these recommendations forward are not, probably never been in a classroom since they, they were 18 years old or something. I mean, I've got the letter here that you're talking about from the BMA to the teaching union, the NEU. Which clearly couldn't be any clearer that it is not safe for starting to get more children going back to school at this time. With the increase in the inflammatory condition, which we're seeing more and more of coming out in children, with the risks in the classrooms. I know that whenever we used to go back to school in September, it wasn't long before viruses go around a classroom, at incredible speed, because they are quite often, we've got overcrowded classrooms in this country, some older schools with small classrooms with 30, 35 children in them. There's no way that you can have social distancing in there. So I've heard people on social media yesterday that I was talking to who were criticising unions, as was in some of our tabloid newspapers, about wanting to keep their staff safe. And, this couldn't be a clearer support of them than this letter from the BMA. So I just think it's something that's very important, and also a lot of parents actually realise this as well. So, please do not criticise the unions who are trying to keep education staff safe, a lot of who have died, children safe and families safe, as well as their own families. It makes me very, very cross, actually.
I'm conscious of time, but Councillor Guinness?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And as a chair of a preschool, we have had many discussions over the last week about this, and we have said there is no way we are opening back up to normal service. There is no way we can have 2- and 3-year-olds social distancing at 2 meters apart in a one-room setting. That is just absolutely impossible. And we have said we will continue with the key and vulnerable children that we have in our setting, and that is it until we feel that the rates have come down and are completely safe to be able to open it up to our children. You're not only risking infecting, spreading it round the children we have there, but also our staff. They're all going back and they'll be taking it back to their families. The children will be spreading it around their families. It's an absolutely ridiculous scenario to think that you can send children in to social distance. And even my own children, I've got one in year 2 and one in year 10, and year 10s they're looking at taking back. And I've spoken to Fernhill on the phone, and I've said to them blatantly, absolutely no way will my daughter be returning to school until I think it is safe for her to do so. Correct.
And I think in the very fickle way, the British press, you go from hero to villain overnight. And I think I'm a lay person, but I have been a school governor, chair of governing body, and a parent, now a grandparent. My view would be to start the school holidays now, and take a view that the new term, if things move forward quickly, could start, couldn't it, in the middle of August, if appropriate. But as some would say, to use children as guinea pigs is not, to me, is not good governance. Conscious of time, and we've covered lots of subjects, but we will always finish. Oh, a couple of questions have come up about litter picking. Both KFC and McDonald's do litter picks beyond their boundaries. And yesterday, with the MD of KFC, effectively agreed that they would donate potentially up to 10 new litter bins, but they wouldn't take the ongoing responsibility of emptying them. If Rushmore prepared to empty them, or if it's across the boundary in Surrey, Guildford prepared to empty them, they will provide them. But as we explained to them yesterday, and they acknowledged that they're guilt by association, because if branded litter is dropped, people tend to blame the provider, not the user, which is really harsh. Now, finally, the high spot of, are there any other questions, Hash, that we haven't responded to, do you think?
Mine's not a question, it's an observation.
Oh, please come forward, yes.
Well, it's quite interesting because we've never sort of been in this situation, you know, where we're not allowed visitors and all this stuff. I'm in the Cherrywood wards, and there has been, I don't know if Christine is aware, there has been issues with the college students parking and also evening parking for residents in Fairfax area, you know, around the back of the sixth form college grounds. And since lockdown, obviously the college students aren't causing an issue at the moment, but the parking is better. And I've noticed this, and I've put on a little bit of a poll on the Facebook group, you know, and there's a bit of a mixture, but what I've noticed is there aren't cars parking on grass verges as much anymore, and it must be because before people were having extra visitors, because obviously they're not now. So that's interesting to sort of note down. I think that, you know, maybe priority should be given to residents and not visitors. I don't know.
I think there's lots of challenges that are going to be posed by the last 8 weeks and the next 8 weeks. And it'll be interesting, I think, how society, how us as individuals respond to that. Because, I mean, just briefly, I walk the dog every night for an hour. And I've noticed since last Sunday's Prime Minister announcement, there are less people out walking at the same time as were 2 weeks ago, but more traffic on the road. So I think gradually people want to return to the norm, but whatever that is. So I think lots of people are committed to saying, I'm going to change the way I do things, but I have this fear that we will just drift back to the good or bad old days, depending on where you're coming from. But let's move on.
Yeah,
Conscious of,
obviously we're
sorry, do you want to just pick that up as a Cherrywood?
Sorry, yeah, we're completely aware of, you know, what goes on around the ward and the students parking, and we've spent, you know, forever trying to sort out students parking. They have extra facilities to be able to park down at the football ground, you know, and obviously in the area that you're talking about, we should have the new system going in, which should then give priority to the residents and no students.
Okay, thank you. But I'm sure that's something, all these issues will roll and we'll see how we will respond.
Keith, I think we did have another comment from a resident asking again about the recycling centre, the waste and recycling centre.
Want to come back on that?
Could there be an appointment system? And I think I covered that before, and it is something that we will be recommending to Hampshire. I already have brought it up with the Hampshire County Councillor, but we'll be making representations to Hampshire to consider.
I think that was top of your Northtown poll, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Good.
Anyway, last but not least, entertainment. If this isn't entertainment for the last hour and a half, but over to Halle for an update on what's good and bad online. But just to say for us, Eurovision freaks, we have a night of entertainment on BBC One tonight. But and I shall be voting for ABBA Waterloo as the best Eurovision song ever. But over to you, Halle.
Fantastic. That sounds like a very good thing to watch. Good morning, everyone. I try to be brief. Let's look at what's happening. Hopefully, these are some activities that people can do next week, which help with their mental well-being. Doing something different sometimes helps. So theatre at home, again, from Thursday this week, National Theatre at Home, they're screening the Barbershop Chronicles. It is on their YouTube. All the links would be available. I'm sure Hausch will sort of share them with everybody. So this is this week. The week after, if people wants to plan ahead, from Thursday 21st, they will be screening a streetcar named Desire. So it will be a good production if you want to watch it. This weekend's free musical on Andrew Lloyd Webber YouTube. is The Show Must Go On, is Cats. So this is the 1998 version of it, direct-to-video film of the musical film at the Adelphi Theatre. So it's really interesting. They start streaming it last night at 7 o'clock. It's only for 24 hours. So if you want to watch Cats, you've got until 7 o'clock tonight. So I think this or Eurovision one, you'll have to choose. You can stay connected with all the latest development across UK's theatre and take a look at what is happening. There's a lot of dances and shows happening. Look at what's on stage at home. You look at their website. They have got their YouTube channels. They've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter channels. So they will put all the latest news. If you're interested in theatre or shows, look at that. If you've got children doing GCSE or A-levels, this event might be suitable to them. Shakespeare Globe, they're streaming Macbeth. This is for schools and it's free on their YouTube. They've started screening it from Monday and it will be available until the schools reopen. There's quite a lot of, you go on the Globe site, there's quite a lot of learning resources, a collection of learning resources there. So have a look at it if you've got children on that age or you're just lucky to watch Macbeth. We've talked a lot about what's happening nationally. There's a lot happening locally as well. Princess Hall in Aldershot, they have got a free Sleeping Beauty pantomime games and puzzle pack, which is really fantastic. So go to their website, princesshall.com/pantomime online, and then you can download games and puzzle sheets with lots of sort of characters from the 2016 shows, and it will be a great activity to play as a family or just for your children. Aldershot Library and Learning Centre also, they're doing quite a lot. There is a video from the playlist Hampshire Libraries Big Fat Quiz of the Week. So Quizmaster Jess is back and he's running a 5-round of general knowledge quiz. There are about 25 questions in all, really interesting. So if you want to do something together as a family, that would be a really interesting thing to do as well. On the story times, the Leaf at Hertford, they are on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, they're having a sort of a story time at 11 o'clock on their Facebook. So they're showing videos. And if you go to their site, they will show you not just the stories, but also the sort of anything else they are doing. There are lots of activities they are doing, and more as younger children. So this week, I think Monday, they're showing the entertainer. Tuesday is the story of Beware of the Storybook Wolves. And I think Tuesday is the Kiss That Missed. So if you're interested for your children, this would be a good activity for them to listen to that, to watch the story. Last but not least, the National Trust they've start reopening some of their car parks. So if you, obviously in line with government advice, so people can access fresh air, open space and nature. If you're interested in that, have a look at their website, nationaltrust.org.uk/walking. The car park which are staff and they've got facilities, they haven't started, they haven't opened, so they will take longer to open, but have a look and see which one is open, and you might want to just go there and enjoy the nature. I think that's all for me this week. Enjoy the show or whatever activities you want to do, and I'll talk to you next week. That's it.
Right, Hash, you need to be off mute.
Right, okay, fantastic. So, Keith has disappeared. Oh no, he's still there.
No, he's still there.
I think we're finished. That was everything. So, Keith's on mute, but he can keep talking. That's fine. That's no problem.
I can keep on talking because I've found out whether I'm on mute or whether I'm loud mic. No one takes any notice. So that's just a joke there, colleague. Thanks, Hash, for the excellent production as ever. And his colleague, his assistant director, was very good to see them appear during the presentation. Thank my colleagues, fellow Labour councillors, for their diligence and activities during this difficult time, and to remind all our residents that please contact us. Our Our contact details are available on the Rushmore website. Please sign up to our Here for North Towns. Councillor Crawford looks either going to go out shopping today or going to become a bank robber. But really, thank you all very much. And I think this week we've had more questions coming in during the course of the presentation. So thank you very much, and we'll be live again 9:30 next Saturday. And enjoy Eurovision tonight. Thank you very much.
And the weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here we are.
Bye.
Bye.